Check out some of the titles from our New Year, New Books program.
And now for some historical fiction reads.
Love is from Australian author Heather Rose, and this spans a time period from France before the French Revolution to London to New York, and then mainly to Van Diemen's Land, now known as Tasmania. Caroline is a young woman who had troubled early life and is trying to reinvent herself. What makes her an amazing character is that she walks a really fine line, sometimes deceiving others or taking advantage a little bit in order to survive and prosper. Great historical fiction. By Paula McLean is the latest historical fiction from the author of The Paris Wife and Circling the Sun. It's a dual timeline set in France. In 1664, Alouette is the daughter of a master dyer at a tapestry work who dreams of creating her own dyes and masterpieces. When her father goes to jail unjustly, Alouette tries to free him, and that leads to her own confinement in an insane asylum. Also, the story is following, in 1939, Christophe, a medical student doing a psychiatric residency in Paris. His neighbors are a Jewish family, and he's slowly starting to realize that they are in real danger and that all of his psychiatric patients are likely to be sent to concentration camps as well. What ties these two stories together is the underground of Paris. Beyond vast tunnels built for early versions of the metro, there were granite quarries all underneath the city that provided the stone to build the city, and hundreds of tunnels still exist underground. All these tunnels are used for secret meetings and as ways, possibly for Alouette to escape her prison and for Christophe to lead his friends and family out of Paris.
Keeper of Lost Children from Sadika Johnson, the acclaimed author of The House of Eve and Yellow Wife. This is a sweeping, unforgettable story of love, identity, and resilience. Keeper of Lost Children is perfect for fans of historical fiction that explores untold stories with heart and depth. And isn't that so much of the appeal of historical fiction? We can learn a bit as we read. It's post-war Germany, and Ethel Gathers, the wife of an American officer, discovers an orphanage. It's filled with abandoned mixed-race children. You see, they're born to German mothers and Black American soldiers. Determined to give them hope, Ethel sets out on a mission that will change countless lives. This one is told across 3 timelines. Ozzie Phillips is a soldier navigating racism in a newly desegregated U.S. Army. Jelka is a German woman struggling to survive amid ruins, and Sophia Clark, a bright teenager in 1960s Maryland whose chance at a better life uncovers secrets that shake her world.
Last of Earth is historical fiction from Deepa Anapara, the author of Gin Patrol on the Purple Line. This is set in 1869 in India and Tibet. Tibet has been closed off to Europeans because they don't want the British to take over like they did India. And it's pretty easy to control when your country is so inaccessible and can only be accessed through a few mountain passes. But one explorer wants to get in and chart one of the rivers out of Tibet. He hires an Indian man to help to chart this journey and travel with him as they face all sorts of obstacles. At the same time, an Englishwoman, Catherine, who's in her 50s, has always wanted to be part of the British Geographical Society, but has been denied entry because she's a woman. She thinks if she can become the first European woman to reach Lhasa, she will be allowed entry. So she hires people and goes on her own journey through a different part of India and into Tibet. Their paths cross, and both groups experience avalanches, dangers, freezing, hunger, all sorts of things. An amazing look at a country that we still know not enough about. Winter comes out in February from Eleanor Shearer. She's the author of River Sing Me Home. In this book, we have a young woman who was a maroon in Jamaica in the 1800s. During slave wars in Jamaica, the British took the maroons who were free and offered to help them, but they helped them by sending them to Nova Scotia with almost no supplies. We follow our main character as she struggles for survival, but often when she's out in the woods, she senses another presence there and soon finds another woman, Agnes, who lives out there. Their relationship is amazing as they find joy and happiness even through a really difficult life.
And now for some nonfiction reads.
Firestorm: The Great Los Angeles Fires and America's New Age of Disaster by Jacob Soboroff. Imagine waking up to a text from your sibling that reads only, "We are evacuating." That's how journalist Soboroff learned that the hillside behind his childhood home was on fire. In Firestorm, Soboroff combines deeply personal memoir with investigative journalism to tell the story of the catastrophic 2025 Los Angeles fires. But this isn't just a book about a single disaster. Soboroff argues that what happened in Los Angeles was inevitable, the result of climate change, prolonged drought, outdated infrastructure, urban sprawl, and human complacency colliding all at once. What makes this book especially powerful is that the author isn't reporting from a distance. He is living through the loss of his home, his memories, and his sense of safety, while also interviewing firefighters, scientists, city officials, and climate experts. That combination of raw emotion and rigorous reporting gives the book urgency and credibility. This is a sobering, thoughtful book about climate, community, and the fragility of modern life. Great Shadow by Susan Wise Bauer. Why do people panic during outbreaks? Why do debates over vaccines, cleanliness, and health become so emotional? In The Great Shadow, historian Susan Wise Bauer explores how sickness, not just disease, but the experience of being ill, has shaped human behavior for thousands of years. Rather than focusing on medical breakthroughs, Bauer centers everyday people, how they explained illness, who they blamed, and how fear influenced religion, politics, and culture. From ancient plagues to modern public health crises, Bauer shows that our reactions to sickness haven't changed as much as we think. The fear, misinformation, moral judgment, and desperate search for control that we see today have deep historical roots. This is accessible, engaging nonfiction that helps readers make sense of the present by looking at the past. The Great Shadow is ideal for anyone curious about history, public health, or why illness so often reshapes societies, not just bodies. We the Women by Nora O'Donnell. American history often begins with the words, "we the people." But Nora O'Donnell asks a vital question: which people? In We the Women, O'Donnell reimagines U.S. history through the lives of women whose contributions were essential and largely erased. Written as a passion project in honor of America's upcoming 250th birthday, this book spans from 1776 to the present, restoring women to the center of the national story. O'Donnell introduces readers to figures who risked treason to publish the first signed copy of the Declaration of Independence and who played key roles in abolition and early suffrage movements. She highlights women engineers, builders, journalists, and soldiers who served a nation that denied them basic rights. This book isn't a dry list of forgotten names, though. O'Donnell weaves together letters, photographs, historical documents, and vivid storytelling to bring these women to life. Their courage, frustration, and determination feel immediate and deeply human. We the Women reminds us that democracy was not built by founding fathers alone. It was shaped by women who demanded that American ideals apply to them too. For readers interested in history, equity, and whose stories get told, this book offers a broader, richer version of what it means to be American. Within a War by Will Haygood. In The War Within a War, Will Haygood tells the story of Black Americans who fought two battles at once, one overseas in Vietnam and another at home against racism and injustice. Haygood follows soldiers, doctors, nurses, journalists, and activists whose service came with complicated expectations. Through these lives, Haygood explores what it meant to serve a nation that had not yet fully embraced you as equal. He connects the Vietnam War to the rise of Black identity, protest movements, music, and civil rights activism, showing how global conflict and domestic struggle were inseparable. This book is both military and social history, offering voices often missing from traditional Vietnam War narratives. With America still wrestling with questions of race, justice, and identity, The War Within a War provides essential perspective on how past conflicts continue to shape our present. If you're interested in a deeper, more honest account of the Vietnam War and its aftermath, this is a powerful and necessary read.
And now on to some fantasy and retellings. The Poet Empress. This is a debut from author Shen Tao that strongly mixes an epic fantasy world with the rich details often found in historical fiction reads. Readers are quickly swept up into the Azalea dynasty where famine ravages the land, poetry magic is an almost completely lost power, and the emperor is on his deathbed. Wei Yin and her family have been struck hard by the famine, and she is desperate to raise them out of poverty. So desperate, she is willing to be concubine to the incredibly brutal prince and heir to the throne. Wei finds herself in the epicenter of political turmoil, warring sides, and the violence of the prince she must please. What she finds is that being born of the people has given her knowledge others don't have, and she has more grit and fight than many would give her credit for, enough to change the course of the dynasty. This book was so immersive and engaging. With the political intrigue and violence of the Game of Thrones series and the lyrical prose of a Lisa See historical fiction novel, this book seamlessly merges genres and pulls readers in. I will note that there are content warnings at the beginning of this book, which makes sense with the violence and darker themes woven throughout the story. A truly epic fantasy that was beautifully written and will keep you on your toes until the end.
Of cozy fantasy, and especially if you're a fan of Emily Wilde's Encyclopedia of Fairies, this is the latest from Heather Fawcett. Agnes Aubert's Mystical Cat Shelter comes out February 17th. Agnes runs a cat shelter in 1920s Montreal and must find a new location for the shelter. The new building she chooses might be owned by a grumpy but very handsome magician. This book's got everything you might want in cozy fantasy: the cats, a bakery, tea, magic, a spunky heroine, and that grumpy but very handsome magician.
Another beautifully written debut that is a reimagining of Cinderella as told through its iconic villain, the evil stepmother. This is a story of power, protection, and the love of a mother. Ethel is now a widow twice over who, in her fall from fortune, found that she has the grit and gumption of her background as a brewer's daughter, despite being thrust into the world of pomp and circumstance. Her two daughters are her world, and while she has tried to win over her stepdaughter Ellen's remained aloof and convinced her only contribution need be her studying how to be a proper lady. So with no tangible means, just hard work and cleverness, Ethel must keep the grand manor hall from crumbling around them, both literally and figuratively. A royal ball on the horizon and the future of all her daughters at stake, Ethel is determined to provide a future for her family. But after the prince falls for Ellen and that magical night turns into a swift proposal, Ethel discovers some sordid secrets about the royal family that will change everything. I loved this book. I feel like many retellings or reimaginings tell the same exact story just through the different eyes. And yet what I loved about this book was its ability to take a classic fairy tale and completely turn it on its head. It was so well done. It's based on a classic fairy tale, but it definitely reads more like historical fiction. I highly recommend this one for anyone who wants a different take on Cinderella, especially one that shows the true depth of women clawing their way out of hard circumstances and the length mothers will go to provide for and protect their children. We hope you enjoy these fiction recommendations.
Mad Mabel is the latest from best-selling author Sally Hepworth. And this one's a little different. It's a twisty, character-driven tale. The novel centers around Elsie Mabel Fitzpatrick, an 81-year-old woman who's lived on her quiet Melbourne street for over 60 years. Outwardly, she's a cranky old neighbor who minds everyone else's business, and yet she harbors a deep, dark past. When her neighbor is Sean, or her nemesis, is found dead in his home, people put it together. You see, Elsie is really the infamous Mad Mabel Waller, the youngest person in Australia history to be convicted of murder, and the police label Ishan's death as suspicious. This story is told in dual timeline. It alternates between Elsie's present life and her adolescence in the 1950s. Hepworth blends her signature humor and warmth with a twisty, suspenseful plot. Mad Mabel is perfect for fans of the Thursday Murder Club and Where'd You Go, Bernadette?
So Old, So Young by Grant Ginder. I was immediately drawn to this contemporary fiction through the description of it being, quote, a novel of impending millennial middle age, end quote, that explores friendships over the span of decades. This book is from Grant Ginder, who's best-selling author of The People We Hate at the Wedding, and is part love story, part tragic comedy. The story is about 6 college friends over the course of 20 years, following their journey as friends through big moves, different jobs, new spouses, and growing families. While they all believed their friendship would be the one unchanging part of their lives, they soon come to realize that time is testing, and we don't always know the ways in which we will run from or cling to our friends in those moments of life, death, and love. The publisher shares how this moving story tells of the growing pains of the millennial generation and is a celebration of how love can evolve over time. It begs the question, how did we get so old, so young?
Meet the Newmans is Jennifer Niven's highly anticipated debut adult novel. She's known for her best-selling young adult works. For 2 decades, Del and Dinah Newman and their sons Guy and Shep have starred in Meet the Newmans, a hit TV show portraying an idealized American family. Millions tune in weekly to watch their flawless black and white personas. But by 1964, the Newmans' apple pie perfection starts to feel outdated, and ratings are plummeting. Beneath the glossy surface, the family is unraveling. Del, the creative force behind the show, harbors an explosive secret. Dinah is going numb, literally, and yearns for more than her scripted domestic role. Guy, the steady son, hides the truth about his love life, and Shep, a rock and roll idol, faces the end of his charm streak. When Del suffers a mysterious car accident, Dinah hires a bold young reporter to help write the show's final episode. This collaboration sparks generational clashes over feminism, family, and identity. The novel is described as funny, big-hearted, and deeply moving, perfect for fans of Lessons in Chemistry and The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo.
Tahari Jones was the author of An American Marriage, a big hit several years ago, and she's finally returned with another book. This one's entitled Kin. Vernice and Amy are 2 motherless girls being raised in Honeysuckle, Louisiana. They've been best friends and neighbors since early childhood, placed to play together in their cribs. But they live vastly different lives. One is raised by an aunt who pushes her to do well in school and to do everything she can to get out of this small town, and she's able to eventually leave to go to Spelman College. Annie, on the other hand, whose mother had abandoned her, spends her life obsessed with wondering why her mother left and if she's still out there someplace. So she stays in this town. This is a novel about mothers and daughters of all types, whether they're stepmothers, grandmothers, aunts, whoever plays the role of a mother in a child's life. It's also about friendship and sisterhood, as those are tested when people take very different life paths.
Perhaps you binged the Netflix show America's Sweethearts about the Dallas Cowboy cheerleaders, and you're yearning for a little bit more. Well, The Jills from Karen Parkman is a debut thriller mystery featuring the Jills professional cheerleading team They are the Buffalo Bills cheerleaders. Virginia is one of the Jills, and she's living her dream. Practices during the week, cheering on weekends, and nights spent growing closer to teammates, especially her best friend Janine. But everything changes when Janine fails to show up for a game. Calls go unanswered. Virginia begins to launch a desperate search, aided by her fellow Jills, ex-boyfriends, and shady figures from Buffalo's criminal underworld. As the investigation deepens, Virginia uncovers some unsettling truths about Janine and begins to question how well she knew her friend. Fast-paced and binge-worthy, The Jills is perfect for fans of character-driven thrillers and stories that explore the dark side of fame. Crux is the latest from Gabriel Talent, author of My Absolute Darling. Dan and Tama are two California teenagers growing up dirt poor in the shadows of the Joshua Tree National Park, one of the world's great rock climbing meccas. Their moms had once been teenage waitresses and best friends until their paths diverged. Now Dan's mother spends her days locked in her room, her dreams squandered, her health struggling, and all of her hopes pinned on getting her clever son out of town and away to university. Tama's mother holds no such ambition. You see, her daughter is mouthy, snaggletooth, queer, and everyone but Dan believes her to be a troublemaker with no hope. But Tama and Dan are fueled by dreams of becoming legendary rock climbers, of devoting their lives to summiting the most challenging climbs and truly defying all expectations, both bad and good, that others have for them. It's a story about friendship, about overcoming really tough odds, very real poverty, and the way that it impacts so many facets of life. Crux isn't just a book, it's an experience that will leave you breathless and questioning the limits of strength and vulnerability.
How to Commit a Post-Colonial Murder by Nina McGonigal. McGonigal grew up in Wyoming as one of the only Indian families to live in Wyoming. She remembers visiting Denver to go to the one Indian grocery store at the time. This book is not autobiographical in plot, but it is a little bit in this setting. This is set in Wyoming among a family that is mixed, East Indian and white. And there's two teenage daughters who confess to killing their uncle, and they blame the British. I'm not going to explain to you. You'd have to read the book of why they think that their uncle needed to be killed because of British colonialism. McGonigal is also the author of Cowboys and East Indians, which she has adopted into a play, which is currently playing at the Denver Center for Performing Arts.
Now for some twisty and suspenseful mysteries and thrillers.
The Ending Writes Itself from Evelyn Clark, the pen name for the authors V.E. Schwab and Kat Clark. 6 authors, 1 legendary manuscript, 0 way out. When a group of struggling writers is invited to a remote Scottish estate, they expect inspiration, not a murder mystery. Their host is the world-famous novelist Arthur Fletch. However, he's dead and his final book, it's unfinished. The challenge, complete the book in 72 hours. The prize, fame, fortune, and truly a career-defining moment. But as ambition turns deadly, the questions become, who will write the ending and who won't live to see it? Perfect for fans of locked room thrillers and sharp publishing satire, The Ending Writes Itself is a clever, twist-filled page-turner that will keep readers guessing until the very last word. Stephen King says, this one is in the running for the best mystery of 2026. With a trove of tropes that mystery lovers will love, it will remind you in the best way of Agatha Christie.
Okay, so this book absolutely blew me away. The New York Times bestselling author Alice Feeney is back with a psychological thriller that will have you on the edge of your seat and questioning everything. This book follows Eden Fox, who recently moved into a seaside home called Spyglass with her husband. She's an artist on the brink of her big break and decides to go for a run before her first art exhibition in town. When she returns home, her key doesn't fit, and she is greeted by a woman who looks just like her and claims to be her. What's more, her husband claims the stranger is in fact his wife. The only thing readers know for sure is that someone is lying. Alongside Eden's story is that of recluse Bertie, who has just been given a life-changing diagnosis and inherits spyglass from her long-lost grandmother. Yet as Bertie pursues truth of her own, mainly looking into a London clinic that claims to accurately predict a person's date of death, and appeared to do so for her grandmother, she is prompted to right some old wrongs. I was so immersed in this story that I read it only a couple of sittings. It's twisty and intriguing, and I was left guessing on so many aspects of the story until the very end. The ultimate story where nothing is as it seems. This is the perfect book to pick up when you need a fast-paced page turner that won't disappoint.
How to Survive in the Woods is a thriller from author Kat Rosenfield. Emma Sharp. She's been raised by a doomsday prepper, and she's a successful entrepreneur in a startup world. But now she finds herself trapped in a very controlling marriage to Logan. Emma has had enough, and she plots a plan with Logan's ex-girlfriend to kill him while they are on a hike on a particularly dangerous part of the 100-mile wilderness in Maine. What begins as backcountry trek becomes a nerve-twisting battle of wits where desire, survival, and deception collide. Someone is lying, someone is watching, and in miles of unforgiving forest, safety can be a cage or a trap. Rosenfield delivers a dark, propulsive thriller that they are dubbing Wild Meets the Wife Between Us. Film rights have already been sold for this one, and the project is in development.
Anatomy of an Alibi is the latest from the author of First Lie Wins. Camille Baylis appears to have a great life as the wife of a lawyer in Louisiana, but he's a very controlling man who tracks her phone, her credit cards, her car. She thinks something's going on with his work, and she would like to do a little investigating, but how can she when he's tracking her every move? She hires a young woman who resembles her, and that woman goes off to a nearby town to spend the day, using Camille's credit card, wearing her clothes, using her phone, driving her car, and making sure to stop and chat with lots of people in the town, really creating a full alibi of where she was that day. But when Camille returns to her home at the end of the day, her husband has been murdered. So does she really have an alibi? It also turns out the young woman she hired had a relationship with her husband in the town where they had grown up. So both women are in a bit of a spot in this incredible plot-turning thriller, Anatomy of an Alibi.
This Story Might Save Your Life by Tiffany Crum. What happens when the world's favorite podcast hosts become the center of a real-life mystery? Benny Abbott and Joy Moore have built an empire sharing against all odds survival stories. But when Joy vanishes and Benny becomes the prime suspect, the truth behind their perfect partnership begins to unravel. Just as the podcast duo is about to sign a lucrative multi-million-dollar distribution deal, Joy and her husband manager, Xander, vanish from their home in LA. Benny arrives to what he thinks is a recording session and finds shattered glass and an empty home. The LAPD quickly identifies Benny as a prime suspect, but to clear his name, Benny launches his own investigation. Benny relies on the first draft of Joy's secret, incomplete memoir to uncover hidden truths. The novel uses a multi-timeline structure and alternates between Benny's present-day narration and draft chapters from Joy's memoir. It's described as genre-bending, domestic suspense, and a will they, won't they romance, perfect for fans of Alice Feeney and Amy Tintera.
And here we are with some more nonfiction reads.
Dahlia by William J. Mann. The murder of Elizabeth Short, forever known as Black Dahlia, is one of America's most infamous unsolved crimes. But in this book, the author does something rare. He steps away from sensationalism and restores Elizabeth Short's humanity. Rather than focusing on graphic details or wild theories, Mann asks who Elizabeth Short really was beyond the headlines. He challenges decades of tabloid portrayals that cast her as a femme fatale or doomed Hollywood dreamer. Instead, he presents a young woman navigating post-war instability, housing insecurity, and a city undergoing rapid change. Mann places the crime in the broader context of 1940s Los Angeles, a city flooded with transplants, economic uncertainty, and weakened social systems. He doesn't claim to solve the case, but he carefully separates fact from myth, exposing how rumor and media frenzy obscured the truth. This is true crime done with integrity. Mann examines how society treats its most vulnerable, especially women, and how easily myth can eclipse reality. If you're interested in thoughtful, well-researched true crime that prioritizes dignity over spectacle, Black Dahlia is an exceptional read. Observing What the Lives of the Condemned Reveal About American Justice by Elizabeth Verkessian. The Deserving takes readers inside a little-known corner of the justice system, the work of mitigation specialists. These professionals investigate the lives of people facing extreme sentences, even death, to uncover how trauma, poverty, abuse, and systemic failure shaped their paths. Elizabeth Verkessian, herself a mitigation specialist, is clear about one thing. She's not arguing innocence. Her clients are often legally guilty. What she argues for instead is humanity. Through deeply personal case studies, Verkessian shows how violence often grows out of unaddressed trauma, how harm endured can resurface as harm inflicted. Her work involves hundreds of hours interviewing families, teachers, neighbors, and communities to piece together entire life stories, not just criminal acts. This isn't comfortable reading. It's heartbreaking, complex, and morally challenging. Verkessian asks readers to confront difficult questions. Are we punishing people for crimes or for suffering? Can justice include empathy, prevention, and dignity alongside accountability? In a time of renewed calls for harsh sentencing and expanded capital punishment, The Deserving offers a powerful, necessary perspective on what justice could look like if we dared to see the full human story.
Is a memoir from Stefan Merrill Block. He was 9 years old when his mother pulled him from public school because his teachers were stifling his creativity. She supposedly homeschooled him, but while she taught him math, everything else was just left up to him to explore. She also missed her baby so much that she dyed his hair blonde so he looked more like a toddler. She also put him on a crawling regimen to improve his fine motor skills. This was before homeschooling became such a big thing with curriculums and support groups and things like that. So there was really nothing to help Stefan, and he begged to go back to public school, eventually going back in high school, where he was academically unprepared, really socially unprepared, and struggled. But he managed to get through and go off to college and has a successful career as an author. It's an amazing story of a mother and son, and you will keep turning the pages on this stunning memoir.
By Shelley Puhak. For centuries, Elizabeth Bathory has been remembered as a monster, the so-called Blood Countess, who allegedly bathed in virgin's blood. But in The Blood Countess, Shelley Puhak asks a far more compelling question. What if the legend is wrong? Blending biography, cultural history, and investigative storytelling, Puhak revisits the evidence behind one of history's most infamous women. She examines letters, court records, political alliances, and the unstable landscape of 17th century Central Europe, a world shaped by war, patriarchy, and power struggles. Bathory was a widowed noblewoman who controlled vast wealth and land during a time of political chaos. Now, the author doesn't declare her innocent, but she also refuses to accept centuries of myth at face value. She exposes inconsistencies in testimony, the role of torture in confessions, and the political incentives behind condemning a powerful woman. This book explores how misogyny shapes historical memory, how rumor hardens into truth, and how women with autonomy were often recast as villains or witches. Atmospheric and unsettling, The Blood Countess challenges easy narratives and asks us to reconsider who history chooses to demonize. If you enjoy dark history, myth-busting nonfiction, and books that complicate the past, this one will stay with you.
Next, we have some love stories, so enjoy these books that celebrate love in all of its many forms. The Last Letters of Sally and Walter. With the heart and heartache of a man called Uwe and the relationship dynamics, with a bit more seriousness, of The Borrowed Life of Frederick Fife, this book is a poignant look at aging and second chances. Sally is a new resident at Golden Grove, an independent living community for active seniors. She wants to navigate this new social scene well, but finds surprising challenges in connecting with residents while leaving her two struggling adult children back at home. Yet after attending a meeting for the community Scrabble Club consisting of only one curmudgeonly member, she finds herself striking up an unlikely friendship over cutthroat Scrabble with Walter. The pair soon find the power in starting something new in their golden eras. The characters in the story are complex and flawed, but you meet all of them at a stage of life where they are finally willing to listen, learn, and evolve from the past versions of themselves, which is refreshing. There's awareness of aging, illness, neurodivergence, and tackling some of the hardest conversations, those with the ones we love and struggle with the most. I will say, while there's plenty to be encouraged by in this read, there's no escaping the true hardship and realities of aging in this one. It is not glossed over or made light of, but genuinely processed and worked through. I also appreciated that this book gave justice to the challenges of being a parent, even when your faculties are diminishing, and the realities of processing your life while continuing to live fully in the present. A very worthwhile read. Sunk in Love by Heather McBreen. The story of a marriage on the brink, this second chance romance shows how one last family cruise can bring a couple together again. Rosalind and Liam were the perfect couple. They met 9 years ago, were married for 5, and have been through every up and down with one another. That is, until the untimely death of Rosalind's mom and the wave of grief that pulls them apart. Now, as they prepare for divorce, Rosalind finds she still can't break the news to her family, who absolutely love Liam. And when her grandparents ask if Liam can officiate a vow renewal ceremony for them on their big upcoming Hawaiian cruise, Rosalind thinks of another plan. The couple pretends they're still together just for the week. During a week trapped at sea with her ex, Rosalind finds that make-believe and reality are beginning to blur, and old wounds, wants, and feelings begin resurfacing for the pair. Both Rosalind and Liam soon have to decide whether it's sink or swim for their marriage in this love story set at sea. Filled with plenty of forced proximity moments and steamy scenes, this romance is the perfect escape when you're craving a cruise during these winter months. Love by the Book by Jessica George. The author of Mame returns with a second book about the power of friendship. This story follows Remy and Simone, a writer and a teacher who have their own relationship and friendship issues and then bump into each other and become friends themselves. Through a series of circumstances that throw them together and secrets from both being unearthed, the pair find solace in spending time with one another and realize the restorative nature of female friendship and the power of platonic love. This book truly felt like the story of life as told through the lens of the relationships we find, lose, and foster over time. It explores the complexities of varying relationships, whether it's familial, romantic, or platonic, and how each can play an important role in life. I love an unconventional love story, and this novel of friendship, its depths, challenges, and heart, shows that friends are loves worth fighting for. A great read. And those are our recommendations. Thank you so much for joining us for the recording of our New Year, New Books program, and happy reading!